Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Gut Instinct Podcast. Before I start or say anything in this, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the positive response on episode 1. Genuinely, I did not expect it to do as well as it did. And I've had so many nice messages and comments from people to say that it helped them. You know, some people were saying that it helped them feel a bit less alone by me sharing my experience. And there was people saying that now they know a bit more about what Crohn's is and like they didn't have any previous knowledge, which genuinely warms my heart so much and makes me so happy because that's all I wanted out of this, was to spread awareness and to help people. And the fact that I've kind of already reached that goal after just doing one episode makes me so happy and makes me feel very accomplished. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Also, there is a fly in my room and I cannot get it out. I've been trying to get it out all night and it just won't leave. And it's buzzing around and I don't know if the mic will pick it up. I don't think it will. I hope it doesn't, but it's really annoying me. So if there's some random buzzing at some point, I do apologise. But there's nothing I can do. Anyway, today we are talking flare-ups, what they are, what it's like, how to deal with them, just everything. Because flare-ups are a big part of Crohn's, kind of like the main part of it, really. And they're difficult. So yeah, I also have my laptop here again for some notes. So if I'm like looking down, you can also probably see it in the reflection of my glasses. But I don't want to go too off track. So let's start with, what is a flare-up? It's basically pretty self-explanatory. It's just where the disease becomes active again and the symptoms come back. And I explained the symptoms in my last video, but I'll explain them again. It's a lot of stomach ache, a lot of going to the toilet and urgency as well. Blood when you go to the toilet, loss of appetite, weight loss, fatigue. But again, so there's so much more that comes with it. And it also varies from person to person and from flare up to flare up. Everybody experiences it differently. You know, some people will have like maybe a flare up that lasts like a week or a couple of weeks, and sometimes it can last months. I've even seen people say that they've been in a flare for like a year, which is just terrifying and awful. And my heart genuinely goes out to anyone who's been in a flare up for that amount of time, because it's absolutely horrific, and I can't even imagine what that's like. Me personally, I've only ever had 2 like proper like big boy flare ups. One when I was 13, which is what I spoke about in episode 1, which is when I was diagnosed, and then my second one, which is now. I actually got told today that I'm still flaring, which was really rubbish to hear actually, because I've technically now been in this flare up since around September time, probably even before that, to be honest. And you know, I got admitted to hospital because things just got progressively worse over like as the months went on, and I got admitted to hospital in January, which was horrific. But they put me on steroids, and I know I thought things were getting better, and then to be told today that like things that they think I'm still flaring, it's just rubbish. But it's one of those things. I found this flare up really difficult as well, to be honest, compared to, you know, my first one. I found that it's really had an emotional it's taken an emotional toll on me, definitely. My mental health, I've noticed, has definitely got worse, and maybe it did as well when I was 13. Maybe it didn't. I can't really remember, to be honest. But I definitely noticed this time that it's had an impact on my mental health. Like, for the last few months before, and maybe at the beginning of the flare up, I was like really happy, content with life. And now I'm just kind of back to feeling a bit meh all the time. Well, not all the time. Some days I'll feel great, and then other days I just feel meh and just anxious. And yeah, it's been hard. I think as well that's definitely down to being admitted to hospital, because I when I was admitted, I'm at uni and I'm like 100 miles away from home or something like that. And being in hospital is one thing, but being far away from your family who were there to support you last time is really difficult, especially like having to go through like procedures and stuff, and just doing it all kind of on your own is really difficult. And this is the first time I've ever had to kind of deal with it on my own. So I found that really hard. I also found being at uni as well, I found it really hard to like look after myself in this flare up, because obviously I'm having to like live like an adult and do like my food shopping, cook for myself, keep on top of like housework and cleaning, and I found that really difficult. And I don't know how other people do it, to be honest. Um, but yeah, it was definitely been really difficult. And to be honest, I say that I've like done it all on my own. I definitely haven't. I've got I have an amazing support system. I have like the best friends, the best boyfriend, who have all been so supportive and so good to me and helped me out so much throughout all this. And I'm really grateful. Shout out to you guys. Love you. Mwah. But, it still does feel lonely at times, and it's definitely been hard. But yeah, that's kind of the basis of flare ups and my flare up. So the next thing I wanted to speak about was triggers and causes of flare ups. So there's no kind of like one cause, it can be caused by so many things. Stress and emotional factors being one of them. Definitely. It can even just like make your symptoms just worse for like a short period of time and just cause like a short flare up, or it can cause a massive one. There's also like missing a dose of your medication, which is actually what caused my most recent, well, this flare up. And to be honest, this whole thing has been so hard. And I can't even remember what dose I missed, when I missed it, how much I missed. I can't remember, because I just feel like this has been ongoing for so long and my brain is just completely turned to mush. So I can't remember what I missed, but I missed my medication and that's what caused this flare up. I'm pretty sure anyway, because I was actually having this conversation with my granny today, and she asked if it was stress that had caused it. And I can't think of anything like in particular that would have stressed me out enough to cause a flare up. So I'm pretty sure that it's the fact that I missed the dose of medication that caused this. Also, switching medications apparently can cause a flare, which I actually didn't know this. I found this out the other day, which is quite interesting, really, because you'd think that if you're switching a medication, then it'd have, more of like a positive effect. Apparently not. Not always. Some painkillers can also cause flare-ups as well, like ibuprofen, and I think aspirin. I could be wrong, but they can cause flare-ups. Never ever take ibuprofen, definitely, with Crohn's or colitis. I have actually taken it once. It didn't do anything, but do as I say, not as I do. Do not take ibuprofen if you have Crohn's or colitis. Not good. And then there's the food and diet, that whole thing. Now, something that really, really annoys me is when you tell someone that you have Crohn's and they're like, "Oh, so what can't you eat?" It it can be worsened by food, but that like it's not something to do with your diet at all. It's yeah, and it really annoys me because it's just such like a common misconception. But that's why I'm here to educate. It's not all based off what you eat and your diet at all. I mean, there is certain things that people tend to avoid, and I feel like if you have Crohn's or colitis, you kind of get to know what foods kind of affect you and what doesn't. For me, I literally eat everything. When I was first diagnosed, I didn't eat red meat for quite a while because I found that upset my stomach. But now I eat that. I literally eat anything and everything. I mean, I'm literally on steroids at the moment. So my appetite is huge and I eat so much, which is good. Having going from having like no appetite to having a massive appetite is a good thing. But I eat anything. The only thing I don't drink is milk because I just find that upsets my stomach a bit. So I just drink oat milk instead. But I can still have other dairy, which is quite strange. And everyone always questions this. I eat dairy, I just don't drink milk. And I don't know why. It's just milk that affects me. But then I've also heard some people say that the most random things affect them, like lettuce. A girl was telling me the other day that she can't eat lettuce, which I thought was so random. But again, it affects everybody so differently. And there's no kind of one thing that causes a flare. It can literally be anything. And it's so unpredictable, which is one of the worst things about it, to be honest. So, how do we deal with a flare up? For me, when I'm flaring, all I ever want to do is just lie in bed and sleep because I'm so fatigued, I'm so tired all the time, I have no energy. All I do is just lie in bed, and it's kind of depressing to be honest. But resting and self-care is like one of the best things that you can do for a flare up. Like get lots of sleep, and I literally spend like most of my time in my bed when I'm flaring. Even if I'm not asleep, I'm in bed, and I tend to watch a lot of Netflix and like Disney Plus or just anything. I think I've literally watched the whole of Shameless. Actually, probably more times than I'd like to admit. And same with the Kardashians. I've watched it way too many times, but it's just one of my comfort. They're my comfort shows, and you need that when you're in a flare. You need to just relax yourself as much as possible, um, and keep yourself comfortable because it's a very uncomfortable thing to just be in pain all the time. So keeping yourself comfortable with a show and a hot water bottle. I have lots of warm baths as well when I'm flaring. I think recently, before I went into hospital, I think I was in the bath for about 4 hours or something like that, which is probably really unhealthy. But it was great. I was in no pain. I sat there watching Netflix in the bath. It was great. I was topped up with a bit of hot water when it got a bit cold. But yeah, a lot of rest and relaxation is like the best thing for a flare up. I also in my spare time, I like to crochet as well. So I did a bit of that when I was flaring, because again, it's just something to distract you. Like, distracting yourself is one of the best things. Like, obviously nothing will take the pain away, and nothing will take away like what's going on, but keeping yourself distracted and looking after yourself is like one of the best things you can do. Also, eating during a flare is a really difficult thing, because obviously you lose your appetite completely and it's awful. The way I see like eating during a flare is, no matter what you're eating, how much or when you're eating, as long as you're eating something, that's it's good enough. It's all you can really do. Like, there's been days where, I've just had like a sandwich for tea, or just even crisps. And, it's not very fulfilling or nutritious, but like, the way I see it is, as long as you've got something going in you, then that's fine. It might not be a very good way to deal with it, might not be very good advice, but that's the advice I will always give to people, is just eat whatever you want, whatever you fancy. Like, sometimes I'll get like really random cravings. I'll be like in bed at like night, like 8 p.m., and I'll just fancy something really random. And if I feel like I can, I will just like walk to Tesco 2 minutes down the road and just get it. Because even if it's not healthy, even if it's going to give me no nutritional value, um, I don't care, because again, I've eaten. I know I've eaten. I do find though that the foods that are kind of like easiest to eat during a flare is a lot of like white, kind of like the diet you get put on before a colonoscopy. A lot of like plain white foods, so like pasta, chicken, sandwiches, anything kind of like plain is easiest to eat. And like, the worst thing is as well during a flare, during this one that I found actually, is that sometimes I would get a craving for something. So I'd go and get it, and then my appetite would be so small that it'd be too much for me to eat, and it was the worst thing ever. I do not miss that at all. Another thing, common knowledge really, but keeping yourself hydrated, drinking lots of water, because you will be going to the toilet so much in a flare and losing literally every bit of nutrition that you have. So keeping yourself hydrated is so important. I drink a lot of green tea as well, just generally anyway, but when I'm flaring I try and drink a lot more of it. I think it's anti-inflammatory as well, I want to say. So that's really good. Obviously it doesn't heal it, but it's good for you. So that's, keeping hydrated is key. Another thing as well, those electrolyte, I think that's what they're called, like dissolvable things that you put in water, are also really good. They make you feel a bit more alive. They do for me anyway. Not for long, but they do make you feel a bit more alive. So they're quite good. And another thing, just keep talking to people. It does, like, I've said this before, but this illness gets really, really lonely. And a lot of the time, people aren't going to understand what you're going through. And that's okay. But, like, for example, I have, like, my friends are so good and we talk about everything, but they will just listen. Even if they don't understand it, they will just listen to me, just ranting about it. And it's so helpful to have just people around you to just listen. Like, whether they understand it or not, it's always good to have a bit of an outlet to people, it really, really does help. So yeah. Then there's, how do you kind of like navigate daily life during a flare? And I feel like there's not really like a normal with Crohn's. Like it's not, definitely not normal. You can't, when you're in a flare, you can't really live like a normal life at all. It's so far from normal. Like some days I do manage to go out and do stuff and live like a normal life, you know, like see my friends, go do what I need to do. And then other days I'm absolutely just, it wipes me out and I can't leave my bed. There's been time, really exposing myself here, but there's been, in this flare up a couple of months ago, there was times where like I didn't leave my bed for like 3 days because I was in so much pain. I couldn't even shower. I could barely like get downstairs to like eat. And it was awful. But then a couple of days later I'd be fine. Like it's so unpredictable. Um the main things that I kind of struggle with day to day when I'm in a flare as well is uni is definitely one of them. Like actually getting into uni um is quite difficult, like doing the work as well, like the assignments and stuff. Definitely find that quite hard. However, something that I did, and I recommend to any uni student, which is probably, you know, any uni student with Crohn's would probably already have done this, but make I made all my lecturers aware of what was going on. I also went through the kind of like disability team at uni who made like a support plan for me. So now I get extensions and they're pretty lenient with my attendance, which hasn't actually been that bad this semester. It's been pretty good. Um, but they kind of like let me off pretty easily if I have to be absent. Um, if you're a student, genuinely, all the help that you can get, like anything that's offered, take it, even if you don't think you'll need it. I remember doing my like disability appointment and I just took everything that they offered me. They offered me all this stuff, and I was like, yep, I'll have everything. Because you never know when you might need it. Like, I did think that the extensions on work would be helpful, and they really are. Like, I couldn't have. There was an assignment that was due the day I went into hospital, or the day before, and I had to get an extension on it because I just wouldn't have got it in on time. And then I ended up doing really well on it because I got that extension. So definitely all the help that's offered, just take it because you never know when you might need it. Maintaining a social life as well, I find really difficult in a flare up because obviously the uni life, like going out and drinking, you can't really do that when you're in a flare. I did at the beginning when it wasn't too bad. When I didn't really realise that I was having a flare, I did. But towards like the time I went into hospital, I missed out on so much stuff because I was really poorly. And it is really difficult to have to miss out on stuff. It can get really hard, and I definitely struggled with feeling a bit left out, especially like seeing people on Instagram like post pictures together. And it would definitely upset me, the fact that, you know, I was invited to all this stuff and I would just have to say no. But I'm so lucky that, again, my friends are so understanding. And the way I kind of work through that is that I just remind myself that, you know, this is temporary and there'll be so many other chances for me to go out and be social. Just because I've missed one thing doesn't mean that I'm going to have to miss everything. So reminding yourself that it's temporary is always so good. I mean, it's so hard to do that, but it definitely works for me. Um, but yeah, maintaining a social life is definitely difficult, especially like even when someone just asks me if I want to go on a walk or just hang out, and I have to say no because I just don't feel up to it. It's so hard. But again, remind myself that there'll be other chances for me to go on a walk. There'll be other chances for me to go out with my friends. But it is so, so difficult. And then there's the whole kind of emotional side of it. I've definitely been struggling with this a lot more recently, with anxiety and kind of like my self image and like body image. Um especially like with the whole body image, especially since going on steroids, because they give you a moon face and like everyone says that they can't notice it. I can notice it because you will notice things more on yourself. I can definitely notice it, and it's definitely made me feel not insecure. I'd say I'm a bit more self-conscious, which is really weird because I've not really felt self-conscious in a long time, and I've been pretty happy with myself. But then when I actually compare pictures from, like, say the week I went into hospital to now, there's such a big difference. But I looked so ill, and I didn't realize how ill I looked, but genuinely I looked like I was so skinny, and it's quite scary to look at. But I've definitely have struggled with kind of like my body image this time, and yeah, my anxiety as well, which I do think that these things could all just be down to the steroids. But being in a flare in general just does mess with your emotions and your mental health. Like, it's a really difficult thing to go through. And like, I'll say it again, but the number one like bit of advice that I can give for that is to just remind yourself that it is temporary and it will go away, even if it takes months, a year, or even just like a couple of weeks. It's not forever, and there will be a time that you feel well again and you feel good about yourself again. Like, it's awful and it's rubbish in the moment, but nothing is forever. And then we get on to kind of like the more medical side of a flare up. So the way that flare ups are treated is mainly with medication. There's lots of different medications that you can go on. I think the most kind of common thing for a flare up, from what I've heard anyway, is the first thing they'll do is just give you steroids. And I actually found this out today, but that's because apparently it's just cheaper for them to give you steroids rather than they put you on some medication, which makes a lot of sense. And I don't know why I hadn't ever thought about that, but I found that out today. So steroids are like mainly the first thing that are offered, especially in adults. And I hate steroids so much. I cannot stand them. I cannot stand being on them. They are awful. I don't even find that they make me feel any better. They do. They do make me feel better. But only at like a certain point. I find that like once I start tapering down, then I start to feel a bit rubbish again. Which is what's happened this time. But yeah, steroids are always, the NHS love to give steroids. However, IV steroids, if you are admitted to hospital for a flare up, they will often give you these, and they are amazing. They literally start working instantly, and I felt so good when I was in hospital on them. But then the only downside is that after you have these in hospital, then you then have to take the oral ones so that you don't like completely send your body into shock, which is rubbish. But being on IV steroids in hospital is a great time. Often as well, if you're like admitted to hospital for a flare up, they might look at changing your medication. They did mention to me about maybe changing my biologic, but then they said that since I'd had a while without it, it could just be because my body was still getting used to it. I don't really know, to be honest. It was all a bit weird, but they ended up deciding not to change my biologic, which is the injection that I'm on. I should have said that. But a lot of people do change their medication, which sometimes helps and sometimes doesn't. It's a really difficult thing, to be honest. Um, there's also natural remedies that people use to treat Crohn's and colitis. Um, so taking vitamins is always recommended. I'm really bad at taking my vitamins, so I need to start practicing what I preach. But vitamins are very good for people with Crohn's. And also, this is really interesting. I found out that so CBD, a lot of people use CBD for like pain and inflammation. I looked into it, but it's so expensive, and I don't want to spend that amount of money on something that I don't know if it'll work. But a lot of people swear by it, and as well as this, I don't know if I can say this on YouTube. Medical, you know that one green leaf, yeah. A lot of people swear by that and get it prescribed and use it for Crohn's, and they say that it like works so well, which is so interesting. And I didn't even know that was a thing, but a lot of people do it. Not me though, unfortunately. I don't know why I said unfortunately. Anyway, there's also the question of when to kind of seek medical help for a flare up. Now, you as a person will know your body best. And if you think that something is not right, even if you think, even if you're not too sure, it's always just best to ring your IBD team, ring your GP. I have been on the phone to my IBD team quite a lot in the last couple of weeks. I say quite a lot, but there's been like a handful of times, but still, that's a considerable amount. Um, even just to like ask a question or ask if like this is normal or this is normal. Like it's always just best to, if you feel like something's not right, just ring up and get some advice. And if it turns out to be nothing, then great, but at least you checked. Um, it's always just so much better to get it checked out. I went to my GP quite a lot before I went to hospital, and they weren't really that helpful, to be fair. They kind of just kept saying, we'll do blood tests. They would do blood tests and they would find out that my inflammation markers were really high, and they'd be like, oh, and then nothing would happen. So that was really annoying. But yeah, it is always just so much better to just, as soon as you kind of feel like a flare's coming on, just seek medical advice. There's also A&E for really urgent kind of matters. I don't really have a good personal experience with going to A&E for Crohn's related things. Last time I went to A&E, I think I waited like 10 hours or something like that just to be seen by a doctor. And then they told me there was nothing they could do. So they sent me home, and I was just like left with nothing basically. But if it is really urgent, A&E is always a good option, because you never know. You know, anything could happen. Like, you can literally go from like being fine 1 minute to the complete opposite within such a short amount of time, and it's scary. So yeah, that's always an option. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on this. I feel like this episode's been a bit of a shambles. I don't really know what I think of it. But again, I hope this was helpful to someone somewhere to kind of understand a bit more about flare ups and how to manage them. If you enjoyed, please give me a like and please subscribe. And I will see you all in my next episode.